Hello and welcome. The name of this podcast series is Taboo Truths and Tales. This podcast is marked explicit.
This podcast is produced in partnership with ustaboo.com. Specials are right now available there exclusively for you because you are listening to this podcast. Visit ustaboo.com. Go there to discover all kinds of very special stuff posted there just for you.
Taboo Truths and Tales is hosted by Madeira D'Souza. That's me. Some of you may know me by my nickname as Woody. Whatever you want to call me, I welcome you here to this podcast. Now let's get started. Thank you.
How is this for an episode title? Sadism swarms, stage, show in Sin City. Wow. That's unusual, isn't it? This is episode number 50 of the Taboo Truths and Tales podcast series from Las Vegas. Yes, that's right. Episode 50. And, yes, the title is Sadism Swarms, Stage, Show in Sin City. Here we go with our podcast creator and host sometimes called Woody. He welcomes as his guest writer-producer Abel Horwitz.
I am so happy to be with you here today, Abel Horwitz, to talk about something very unique in Las Vegas. It's, I guess, a horror theater experience. Is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah, yes, it would be a theatrical horror experience, which is exactly what you just said. You start in an immersive lobby, you get into our story that way, and then after a little bit, the main characters come out, they begin to interact with you, and they pull you into the asylum.
And when you say asylum, you're alluding to an actual historical event. There was a guy, the Marquis de Sade. People probably heard of him. Some say he is the French Shakespeare. That's kind of odd, but most people have heard of the Marquis de Sade, and he was killed in an asylum. But that is not what your Las Vegas show is about. Am I correct?
No, it is. It's the Marquis de Sade presents Abandon. Marquis de Sade was a late 1700s, early 1800s French philosopher. We get the S in BDSM from his name. Sadism comes from Sade. He did die in an asylum. He died of old age. He was not killed. He lived a very, very long life. He was 74 when he died, and while he lived most of it in an asylum, he lived a very rich life because of his station. A marquis was a very high post in the French king's world. But we were very much inspired by his writings. We were very much inspired by his life story, which is absolutely wild. He got thrown into prisons and into mental institutions for the majority of his life, and he was a prolific writer. His prose is not Shakespearean. His is a very flowery language, and it's I wouldn't say it's easy to read, though I guess Shakespeare isn't either. But at least it's nicer on the ear. But he wrote a lot. He wrote 120 Days of Sodom, which is probably his most famous writing, whilst in the Bastille. He wrote it on scraps of paper that he fastened into a scroll. He hid it in the walls of the asylum to keep away from the authorities. And then when the Bastille was stormed, which was the spark that ignited the French Revolution, which, just a little aside, fascinating life, but he would scream out the windows of his cell about the torture that was going on to him and his fellow inmates, which was completely false, but he was provoking the villagers into a frenzy so he might have started the French Revolution, which is pretty fascinating. And yeah, he had this scroll. He would hide it in the walls of his cell. When the when the Bastille was stormed. Before that happened, he and his fellow prisoners were taken away, and he wasn't able to get the scroll in time. So, as far as he knew, this piece of writing that he'd spent 3 months obsessing over was destroyed in the storming. But that scroll was found. That scroll has this fascinating story. You can read all about it in a book called The Curse of the Marquis de Sade. But fast forward to 2023, it is considered a national treasure of France, and he is considered, one of the great minds of France, which is, at the time he was thrown into jail repeatedly for his great mind, for the things he wrote, for his behavior, and and he was definitely the star of our show.
But his you'd say great mind, and I don't disagree. I don't know a whole lot, but about him except what I've read. But I think he's more associated, isn't he, with sexual? There was a phrase I found, libertine dementia, which is essentially a person is crazy because they have no sexual morality, which is an odd thing to say. But what do you think about great mind versus great experimenter in sexual behaviors?
Am I allowed to curse?
Oh yeah. We're completely explicit here.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, what can I say about the Marquis de Sade? I can't say he was there's a lot of controversy about him. I think we need to point out historically, being a Marquis meant that he was just right underneath the king in terms of rankings. So he was born into an immense privilege, a wealth that he, was quickly disappeared, but he lived his life as if it hadn't. And an example of just how untouchable he was is that at some point there was a detective who was assigned to him, and he always figured out a way to escape. He was very much a scoundrel. But the detective finally caught him. And the detective went up to him and said something along the lines of, like, I caught you, you son of a bitch. As a result of the detective having the audacity to speak to a noble that way, the detective was thrown into jail. So I mean, in today's parlance, you could, he was incredibly abusive to women and to young girls and to young boys and to men, but in the context of when he lived, he was just another nobleman who had sex with whoever he wanted to, who paid for sex gladly. But we have to also, I think, something. So we're not saying that he's a good guy. He was very much a product of his time. He was very much a product of his ranking. But we also need to, something that we talk about in our show, or I'm sorry, not talk about our show, because there's no words in our show, but something that we point out is that de Sade loved sex, and he would sleep with men, with women. Really, he saw no difference. He would always say, this is how God made me, and I am doing exactly what God has put me on the earth to do, while completely denying the existence of any sort of higher power. And, LGBTQ scholars point to de Sade and his writing as some of the earliest writings that we have about the pleasures of gay sex, So he's very much, a queer, he's very much part of queer history. Like I said, he put the S in BDSM. So he brought that into the world, and he was a fascinating. He was 200 years ahead of his time. We are only now living in a world in which the Marquis de Sade would have felt right at home.
If you look at today, what do you think Who is there a person or I don't know, like a rock and roll group or a hip hop group
Yeah.
that would embody what he was 200 years ago?
Oh gosh, not off the top of my head. He was so. I mean, you couldn't do what he does today, right? It's not. Again, like he was sleeping with 14-year-old young peasant girls. Like that's not acceptable today, nor should it be. But again, keep in mind the context of the time he lived. So I don't know. I mean, he was wild. He looked to push boundaries. I'd hate to name anyone of today's because again, like anyone who you would name would be considered a pedophile. Again, I'm not advocating for any of this stuff. I'm just pointing out that this was the time and the life that he lived. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry,
Okay.
Woody, I can't point to it.
No, I understand. I don't have anybody in mind either. I mean, I know there's a Las Vegas group that did a song with his name in it. I'm trying to think of the group. It's not Killers. It's not
Oh.
Nightmare.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't know, but he's notorious. I mean, they've
Yeah.
made many movies out of him. They made the play Marat Sade out of him. He's really installed himself into our collective consciousness.
Yeah.
Whether you know about him or not, he's just there.
Well,
He exists.
I think most people have heard of him at least. But I wanted to ask you about that. Why would you? I mean, you are one of 3 people listed as writer.
Yeah.
The director of the show is one of the writers, and then there's
Yeah.
a third person. Can you talk about you and the other 2 and how all this came together? How you chose at some point to write about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the director her name is Jana Weimer. The executive producer is Bob Bullwinkle. And that he's fabulous. He's 6'8". He's a moose of a man. He is he's our leader. He's wonderful. And his day job is raising money. He owns a nonprofit and he raises money to fund the arts education and inner city programs in inner city schools. So where to begin? I'll begin with Bob being Jana's high school drama teacher. Jana fell in love with theater because of Bob's ability to teach it. And they remained friends. He's her mentor. And 20 years ago, Jana co-created a show called Urban Death, which is based in a theater in Los Angeles called Zombie Joe's Underground. The show is a series of rapid-fire vignettes. The lights go up, you see something fucked up. The lights go off. The lights go up, you see something crazy, twisted, scary, sexy, whatever. The lights go off. So just, an hour of just, like I guess, TikTok, basically, but on stage. You can't get bored. If something isn't interesting to you, something new replaces it in 30 seconds. It's absolutely fascinating. So she co-created that show 20 years ago. Bob had seen it. He loved it. He had been telling her for years, like, let's make something together. 10 years ago, I saw it, and, it struck me like lightning. I just had never seen anything like it. And I got involved in the theater. I started working with them. I was really interested in immersive theater by that point. I'd interned at Sleep No More in New York City, which, was very seminal in the immersive theater world. I'd been an actor in Halloween Horror Nights, one of those monsters that jumps out and scares people. And really, I had this thought that, if you market something as a haunted house, you'll get an audience who would probably never see something called a play, but would love to see a haunted house. And it's the same thing: lights, actors, sound, costumes, storytelling, just put in a very different way. So when I got involved with the theater, I really just kept talking to Jana. I kept talking to Zombie Joe, who's the producer of Zombie Joe's Underground. Put a maze in front of your show. Put a maze in front of your show, and I give them a lot of credit. They listened to me, and they created something called Tour of Terror, which continues to run. It's in LA. It's fabulous. Jana and I worked on it for 10 years together, and it's the most successful show the theater has ever had. So that began Jana and my creative partnership. And then in 2018, I produced Urban Death going to Edinburgh, to Scotland, for the Fringe Festival, which is this massive theater festival that, millions of people descend on the city of Edinburgh during the month of August. There are countless numbers of shows, and you just keep getting told when you go, like, you just can't expect an audience. Like, you're doing this because you love it, you're doing this because you're having fun, but you're not doing this because you think that you're going to get an audience. But no one else was walking around the streets of this medieval city passing out flyers dressed like zombies. And we learned very quickly, either someone runs towards you or runs away from you. And the people who run towards you, man, they love you.
Those are the ones you want. You want to grab them.
Yeah, exactly. So we started selling out shows very quickly. We got a lot of great reviews very quickly. We started getting recognized in the streets, which was absolutely surreal. And the show is wordless, it's these vignettes, like I said. So you don't have to speak English to like it, or to understand it, I mean. And by that point, the show had gone to New York. The show had, Jana had taken it to South Africa for a run. So now we had these, 3 touch points outside of Los Angeles to say, hey, this show can succeed and this show can survive. After that, Jana and I worked on an immersive theater show for Paramount Pictures. We were going to do an immersive show on the Paramount studio lot, kind of like a Sunset Boulevard meets Twilight Zone show, which was scheduled to open October 2020.
No.
Oh, no. So they bought it. They paid for it, which was really cool, and it's on their shelf somewhere. Maybe one day we'll see it. But pandemic hit. It was a lot of sitting back and being like, well, what do we do next? Bob and Jana were talking about making something, and Jana brought me on board, and the three of us started taking meetings together. We started talking about what we wanted to do together. We decided on Vegas pretty quickly because, it was just obvious, right? Like, LA isn't really a place to debut a new theater show, especially something as weird as ours. 1 million people come to Vegas every week, which is nuts. Vegas is spectacle. Vegas is, Meow Wolf came, so people are now looking at Vegas not as just like the Strip or Fremont Street. They can start to see different experiences. And to finally answer your question, why Sade? We wanted an arc. We couldn't just do like random vignettes, but we wanted that style. So we needed a story to tell. And we started looking at various stories, and his was just so outrageous and so notorious and so wild that we just saw so much material, so many angles that we could come from. As I said earlier, like there's this LGBT undercurrent that we could really work with. The fact that he was in and out of mental institutions and asylums throughout his entire life. We started discussing the realities of how humans have treated other humans throughout history, and things that we now consider mental health issues were things that you could be thrown into the asylum for. Post-traumatic stress disorder, postpartum depression, addiction, alcoholism, all these things that people were thrown into these horrible prisons for. So really all we did was think about the way humans have treated other humans throughout history, and and took it to the worst level that we could possibly imagine. And then took Sade's story about him writing 120 Days of Sodom and created an evil priest villain to be his villain, like the villain. We created a doctor, to experiment on the patients. We created the orderlies, the Tweedledee and Tweedledum. We created the patients. We just created a whole story around what, and then we kind of put our players in the asylum, and we wrote 1,000 ideas for what they could do, and then kept narrowing it down until we had something that we felt was very effective and very powerful to tell our story.
That's amazing.
And that's the long answer.
That's the long answer. No, I really appreciate that, because I met you at the Nightmare Cafe in Las Vegas in the Arts District, and I'm someone who I go there regularly. And I was impressed.
Apparently you win trivia.
I do win trivia My partner, Sam Glass, and I are multi-time winners, to be honest. No bragging, just the truth.
Not bragging.
No.
Yeah.
But, I was going to say, you were talking about something that seemed completely original. I mean, not that the Sade is original, but this idea to do a play in the Arts District. Now, I have attended many of the, they call them immersive theater presentations at Vegas Theater Company, which is where your show will be in October.
Correct.
And also, I've been to Majestic Repertory Theater, also Arts District. But what you talked about that night at Nightmare Cafe seemed very, very different, very fresh, and completely outside, to me, my thinking, completely outside the envelope. What did people say? How did you sell this idea to get a show like this greenlit, do they say that, to be produced in Las Vegas? I can only imagine trying to get investors like, oh yeah, we're going to do a play about sadomasochism and young children being sexually abused, and then
we don't. For the record, that's not in our show.
Oh, okay, all right.
I will say this: when we were, and thank you for the kind words about our very fucked up show. When we were looking for PR representation, to let Vegas know about who we were, we got a lot of rejections because they Googled the Sade, and of course, what comes up is these trigger words that, again, I will continue to maintain. We have to put him in context of his time and his position and as a nobleman. It's not a good thing, but yeah, he definitely did all these things that we now know are completely inappropriate and completely not acceptable. But people would Google Marquis de Sade, and these horrible things would come up, and they'd be like, "We can't work with you." That's just not a line we're willing to cross. I will say unequivocally, we are not hurting. We are not abusers. We are artists making theater, and no one gets hurt. Everyone goes and sleeps in their own bed at night. The blood is all fake blood. The set's all a fake set. We're just sensitive artists. But what was it like? It was how we started. Is we came to Vegas. We did is it called a listening tour? Basically, we bought a lot of lunches for a lot of locals, and we said we have this idea, and we're from out of town. We were aware that people come to Vegas and think that they know the city better than the locals do, and don't treat the locals with respect. And we did not want to be that, period. So we bought a lot of lunches for a lot of people who had their finger on the pulse of Vegas, and we just asked them how we do this, and we got a lot of good advice. We got a lot of good leads on where we could go and where we could take our show, and how we could do this properly. So we put together a pitch deck. We met with various theaters. We toured spaces. We thought about what area of town to go to. And Vegas Theater Company, which, yes, is in the Arts District, just checked off all the boxes. Daz Weller, the artistic director, didn't bat an eye when we told him that we were going to make a very fucked up R-rated horror show. He thought that was a unique take. He, again, he didn't think we were monsters or pedophiles. He recognized we were artists. And then, it's right in the Arts District, right in the center, in between the Strip and Fremont Street. So, I think it's hard to convince tourists that there's any Vegas outside of, the casinos. But at least we were like right in the middle, and the Arts District is just so cool. So cool.
Yeah.
We started introducing ourselves to places like Nightmare Cafe, to Artifice Bar, which is our neighbors, to Taverna Costera, to the Garden, to the English Hotel, like basically anything with a Mezcla, You and Me Sushi. These are all places we partnered with, just walking distance from the theater, to either get prefix dinners or custom cocktails, because we really wanted to let the city of Las Vegas know, like, we are in love with this city. We have been welcomed. We have been doing everything we can to let the local community know that we want to be a part of the fabric of this community. Then we cast. We thought, we were worried that we wouldn't find enough talent, quite frankly, to cast our show. So we were considering the logistics of bringing our LA actors out. No, not true. We could have cast the show 3-4 times from the amount of talent that came out. It was just such an embarrassment of riches, is what we found. Vegas has been wonderful to us.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I noticed was you were so comfortable when you were speaking at Nightmare Cafe about all this, and then today you're talking about, well, we're not pedophiles. The cast,
please don't make that be the quote.
No. What I'm saying, it really is kind of pathetic that an artist like yourself has to say, "Oh, we're the good guys." That really pisses me off, I have to say. But I applaud you, because you are doing something that is pushing the boundaries. We are in a world where people get upset about drag queens, and here you're coming out with, yes, it's Las Vegas, and Las Vegas has drag performances that are not the subject of political pushback like other places. But this is really, I have to tell you, as a local in Las Vegas, I see that you are really pushing the boundaries in ways that I think you should receive recognition for doing.
Hey, thanks, man. That means a lot. We're like, it's really good to feel seen the way we want to be seen. Going back to why we chose Sade, it's because the things that he spoke about, sexual liberty. He wrote 2 books, Justine and Juliet, about women, and they were the first books that people can point to where women actually owned their own sexuality. They enjoyed sex, God forbid. We're very sex positive. We're very kink positive. We're very queer. Our cast is made up of, the entire spectrum of the LGBT rainbow, and that, it wasn't intentional, but we cast blind. We cast whoever was the best for the part. And so I think that that any sort of rejection it just limits you and limits the colors that you get to paint with. So we were very much trying to be as pushing the envelope and as far as possible. And I'll maintain this, and I've worked with the director Jana for 10 years. There is nothing that we can put on stage that nearly matches how just fucked up humans are to each other. All we're doing is just reflecting back, holding a mirror to society, to the ugly parts, and if it makes people uncomfortable, that's on them.
That's on them.
That's
exactly.
Not on us.
Exactly right. Yeah. Now you said you cast in Vegas, and I looked up. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but you cast
Josh Berg.
Yes,
Josh
all
Berg,
right. He was listed in just Googling his name.
Yeah.
Comes up as Blue Man Group. What can you tell us about him and his performance.
Oh, happily. Oh my God. Yeah, we've got a Blue Man, we've got a Cirque du Soleil, we've got two Cirque du Soleil performers. We got one of our people was in Evil Dead. Like it's been great. Specifically about Josh. Well, he's just he was trained. He's British. He's trained as a Blue Man, so he's got this incredibly technically precise way of taking notes and performing. He's just one of the most technically professional performers I've ever seen. You just need to tell him what to do and where to go, and he'll do it because that's his trainings. And on top of that, he's so nice. He's such a decent man. I got to see him perform as a Blue Man, which was an absolute treat. So he was great. Josh is wonderful. He's really embraced the role. And he's not a horror buff. He's an actor, but he's game. He's great. And then I'm sorry, what's your next question?
Oh, I just wanted to find out about him.
Yeah.
The thing that struck me though, I started looking up because I had not heard of you or any of the the Los Angeles traditions. You were saying 30 years worth of legacy there in these horror theater events.
At Zombie Joe's?
Zombie Joe's, yeah. And
30 years. Who runs a theater for 30
I know,
years?
it's impossible. Even Saturday Night Live has not been on that long, I don't think. Anyway, my question was, I saw in many locations that it said there was no dialogue. In other words, no spoken words. It's all you used another phrase, but there's no talking or no vocalizing.
There's definitely vocalizing. I mean, people scream. We have a lot of French, but it's not designed for you to know what we're saying.
Okay.
Right.
But it's very daring to do an entire show without words, I would say.
Oh no, that's not true. Cirque du Soleil does it. Blue Man.
Well, yeah, but those are ballets, and the Beatles love at Mirage. It's all music, but they're singing lyrics from the Beatles. But and you do have music in your show.
Oh
and
yeah,
I'd
love to talk about the music.
Well, yeah, because I couldn't figure out where you were going to get music that would be relevant, but you have all original music, right?
Oh yeah, let's talk about our music. Oh my God! So the person who composed our music, his name is Joseph Bashara. And you can Google him, and you will see that he composed the scores for Insidious, Conjuring, Annabelle. I mean, this man, the fact that we got him, and we got him because he loves Jana. He's been watching Jana's shows for years, and we know him. He's super nice. He just loves all the weird, crazy shit that we love. So we got Joseph to do our score. I just was in the theater listening to it being mixed. It's oh my God, how lucky are we? And really, like, that's what, like, even if you don't like, I don't know, his score is Hollywood professional. We got Katie Halliday, who won an Emmy for Stranger Things, this last season of Stranger Things that was so good. She won an Emmy for the sound design, which was amazing in this show. And so we got her to do our sound design. I mean, that was just an embarrassment of riches in our sound department.
Yeah, I saw her name listed, and I saw the composers as well.
Yeah.
I've seen those films, but his name doesn't jump out like John Williams or... Someday though, maybe he will.
Yeah, we've told many people, and their eyes light up. They know exactly what he sounds like. Music is so important for horror movies, as you know.
Oh, so yeah.
He's that guy.
He's that guy. Now you have, we have done, I don't know, a little over half an hour, and never once gave a way for people to get tickets. which is
Oh gosh, yeah.
my
I mean,
mistake.
See, that's the thing. Like you told me 20 minutes, but I could talk about this show all day. It's just incredible.
Well, we want people to. I do want people to go, and this is only in the month of October, 2023.
Well,
hopefully, it'll get renewed, or what do you call it? Extended after Halloween into November. You think?
Well, that all depends on if people show up.
Yeah.
The goal is that we get the word out, is that Vegas responds to us the way we really hope they will. And then, the demand is such that we can continue to extend. This is really our first, if this hits the way that we hope it is, we're going to try to make it a permanent venue. Universal Studios is bringing Halloween Horror Nights to Vegas. Zach Bagans has his Haunted Museum. I mean, the Saw escape room, the Blair Witch escape room. There is an absolute horror community in Vegas, and we want to be a part of it. You know?
Well, I think your timing is really, really good. But tell people, if they don't yet have tickets, how to get tickets.
Well, there's several ways, but they all lead to the same website. You can go on our Instagram, which is Abandoned Vegas. You can go on our website, which is abandonedvegas.com. You can go to Vegas Theater Company's website, which is theater.vegas, and it's spelled the British way, Thetare. I hope I spelled that right.
Yeah.
Whatever. Theater. Theater.vegas. Yeah, so abandonedvegas.com, Instagram Abandoned Vegas, or theatre.vegas, and you will find a link to our tickets. And we preview October 5, we open October 7, we run through Halloween. We have a 7 p.m. and a 9 p.m. show. Get there early to wander through our immersive lobby, to find all the Easter eggs that we've hidden around Vegas Theater Company, to see our pre-show, which is going to be real kinky, and then afterward, and have a drink, have 2 drinks, have 3 drinks, then afterwards take a photo with the cast, and then go to one of our partners and enjoy one of the custom cocktails that we have crafted specifically for you, the audience.
That is great. That is so exciting. Well,
buddy, I'm having so much fun.
I know.
This is so much fun.
We should do this like 2 more hours, but we won't. I have to respect your time, because we're recording this on October 1st, so you're just a few days away from your preview.
Today's Sunday and we open Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well,
it's like this iceberg that I've been staring at in the distance for 2 years, and now, man, we are looking right at it.
Yeah. Well, I do appreciate you cutting some time out of your busy schedule, carving some time to talk with me, and I certainly encourage all of the listeners of this podcast to be sure, if they haven't already, to get tickets. But this was a lot of fun, and I am glad that we happened to cross paths that night in Las Vegas. And I cannot tell you how much this means. I try and do taboo topics, and when we met, I asked you, well, do you think this is taboo? It's like, no, it isn't taboo. Come on, what could be more taboo than Marquis de Sade? I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah. He put the S in BDSM,
that's
baby.
Right. Well, again, Abel, I appreciate your talking with me here today, and as they say, break a leg, wish you well. Hope all this leads to a permanent venue here in Las Vegas.
Woody, thank you so much for the opportunity. I mean, I've got a big smile on my face, which I know you can see, but the listeners can't. What a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for taking us seriously and seeing what we're trying to do. I look forward to the next time you and I cross paths.
Okay.
Please come see my show, and then let's talk about it afterwards.
All right. Thank you again, Abel.
Thanks, man.
I really appreciate your exuberance, and it really is sad, though, that artists have to apologize for their art, because with a subject matter like this, you're going to end up getting some rejection in Vegas, but
Well, we kind of hope we get protesters, quite frankly.
Oh no, that's not gonna. I don't think. I mean, maybe if you had a drag performance, maybe there would be.
Oh, Jesus.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean, yeah, we're really controversial, and we hope that people. We hope that people run towards us who want to, and the people who don't run away from us.
Yeah, that's.
But I mean, it's just, until we open, until word of mouth spreads, until people tell their friends about us, like all I can do is just beg people to buy a ticket.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a feeling this will catch on, and again, really wish you well. Abel, thank you again.
Thanks, Woody.
Thank you.
What a pleasure.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that's all that we've got for you. This was episode number 50 of the Taboo Truths and Tales podcast series from Las Vegas. This episode was named Sadism Swarms Stage Show in Sin City. You heard our podcast creator and host, sometimes called Woody. He was talking with his guest writer-producer Abel Horvitz. They discussed the production at Vegas Theatre Company in the Las Vegas Arts District known as Abandon. The production is one you won't want to miss and maybe see it more than once. The show title is Abandon, and the venue is the Vegas Theatre Company in the Las Vegas Arts District. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tell others about this podcast episode named Sadism Swarms Stage Show in Sin City.